can do a logical guess that some of you may have been on a cruise ship, some of you may cruise 2 or 3 times a year. Maybe it's on Royal Caribbean or Carnival or Norwegian or Holland American or Celebrity P&O Cruises. There's so many cruise ships to choose from nowadays. But did you know every time you go on a cruise ship, you are actually putting your life in danger? Not because of the actual construction or the structure of the ship, because of the officers and crew. Let me explain. The most important thing about a cruise ship is safety. That should be the number one concern. Even though nowadays you would actually guess it's more about making money. And if you go on a cruise ship, you may pay something like $6 or $7 just for one bottle of beer. How much is one bottle of beer for a cruise ship? That how much they pay for is pennies. The crew and officers, or officers and crew, usually have contracts anywhere between 3 months to up to 9-10 months of the year, 7 days a week, averaging about 10 to 13 hours per day. It is very stressful. And during the day, you would meet crew like this, would be very happy to serve you a glass of beer. But when they finish work, they would go to the crew bar and they would have a drink or two. The actual maritime law actually states in various different countries how much units of alcohol do you have in your blood. If you're in Europe, 2. If you're in America, 1. It's near enough the same as driving. You're not going to get into a car basically drunk. I know some people do, and they say everything's okay, but you're just out of control. You're not aware 100%. It's exactly the same on a cruise ship. If something does go wrong, like a fire when you're crossing the Atlantic Ocean, the crew alert would sound and all the crew must rush to their muster station and get ready maybe for an evacuation of the ship as the last resort. I worked on cruise ships as an assistant cruise director on contracts for quite a few years, and I have been in 3 emergency situations, all in the Atlantic Ocean, luckily all at daytime. And there was a fire, one in the crew galley, one in the engine room, and the other one I think was the engine room as well. It didn't get to the situation where the passengers had to go to muster in their muster station like the theatre or a bar, so they could be evacuated safely. There's lots of heavy training related to that. But the crew, if this happened at, let's say, 1-2 o'clock in the morning, you could say a high percentage of the officers and crew would be way over the limits, the drink driving limits, the cruise international maritime law limit. Now, and they, if it was the worst case scenario, would have to evacuate the ship, but they're drunk. They are unable to perform. This is a big danger on ships. When I worked on cruise ships, I would wake up round about 8 o'clock in the morning. I would get into the office round about 9 o'clock and I'd work till about 12. Then there was lunch, and then you would go back to work maybe between about 2 to 5 o'clock. Then you were back on duty round about 8 o'clock until midnight. Then you do it all over again. You do have a little bit of free time, but when you get into management positions, you actually get less time to do so. And it does depend whether it's a sea day or it's a port day. But at the end of the day, 11:30, 12 o'clock, you get into your cabin. You may want to go and socialize and have a beer or two with some of the officers and the crew, or in the wardroom, which is the officers bar or the crew bar there. And you would have 1 or 2 beers and the music's playing. You say, oh, one more, and one more. And definitely 100%, I would be over the limit. And I definitely wouldn't do this if I was driving a car. But on a ship, yeah, and you possibly would do this every single night. Sometimes you'd come back into your cabin, you would have maybe 5 or 6 glasses of whiskey, so you can have a really good sleep and start again. It's just part of life on a cruise ship that the staff, the crew, the officers do drink. Now, you can have, for example, possibly 2 beers in the space of 1 or 2 hours, 2 bottles of Budweiser. And then if there was an emergency at 3 o'clock in the morning, you would be ready for it. You wouldn't be drunk. So daytime is relatively okay because a lot of the crew are working hard and they don't have time to have a beer. They may go to the crew bar at lunchtime to have a beer, but that would be it and they wouldn't be over the limit. But nighttime, when all the bars shut down and restaurants are closed, etc., then you could say quite a high percentage of the crew would go and have a beer or two, and more than two. So in an emergency situation, you as the passenger would go into a muster station as the last resort, and the person in charge and the people around you, the muster personnel, would be sort of like smelling of alcohol, and you say, oh my God, would they be able to evacuate the ship? Now, there's lots of training related to it. I was an officer in charge of muster stations, but if it was like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, could I do it? I don't know. But that is the actual danger. Cruise ships are huge nowadays. Some of the biggest cruise ships can hold, 5,000-6,000 passengers. Yeah, a metal thing in a deep ocean and another 3,000 crew. And if it was 4 o'clock in the morning, there could be a possibility that all the crew, their main job, their main point of view is the safety, regardless, should be. But if they've had like a drink or two, nothing's going to happen, it's going to be okay, then how are they going to evacuate in an organized way? This is food for thought, and this is one of the dangers of actually cruising on a cruise ship. Would I go on a cruise after working with a cruise company? The answer is not really, no. Why? Because you're in a confined space. It's sometimes like forced enjoyment where everyone has their own cup of tea. For me, I just like to go to a resort and relax and do everything at my time, not being forced to have dinner at a certain time. Nowadays, everything is on an application and you're near enough forced to go and buy specialty meals, and drinking is ridiculously expensive compared to the actual price that the cruise company would pay for it. So, second thoughts about going on a cruise ship is the actual staff. They may be lovely, they may be polite, they may be so sweet. Yeah, you're really happy with them, but behind the scenes, they want to relax at the end of the night, and you could say quite often that they would be over the limit to perform duties, safety duties at sea. Just food for thought, just giving you real life of what happens on cruise ships behind the scenes. Now, I know there are some videos related to cruise ships and people on who do jobs there, and they would show you that, but they wouldn't show you the actual alcohol that's being consumed there. And I think cruising has changed dramatically. It's just a big commercial enterprise, and I think the glamour has disappeared from cruising. Give me your thoughts below in the comment section. Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I just being ridiculous? Am I spoiling the occasion? What would be the solution? And please let me know. Thank you for your time. Be good to each other. My name is James. Happy cruising. Boop, boop.